This episode is brought to you by Adaptive, the software for builders that automates draws, budgets, and bookkeeping with AI. For over a year now, I've been partnered with Adaptive, and they've just been an amazing game changer in terms of efficiency in our time and all our bookkeeping. From the time we get an invoice, we import it into their system. The AI codes it, cost codes it, job codes it. All we have to do is review it, pass it through the people internally in the office, all digitally, and then it gets approved and paid all via ACH. It's becoming extremely fast and saving us countless hours a day and a week. When it comes to draws, all of our budgets now are set in Adaptive as well. So now when we cost code against the draws, we can do our change orders, and then with a click of a button, we can submit these draws to our title companies or to our homeowners for faster payment. If you're looking to save time, and if you're looking to be accurate, I highly recommend Adaptive. Additionally, if you'd like to listen to one of their founders share the story of Adaptive, you can listen to episode number 15 on the Curious Builder podcast. Today on the Curious Builder podcast, we had a repeat guest. We had Matt Calvano from Adaptive, one of the founders and the head of their sales team. We had Reece Barnes out of Colorado, and awesome conversation. We really dove deep on some AI technology. It's always kind of fun with a repeat guest on the show is to find out, if where they were when you first interviewed them and where they're at today. So we talk about some of the new features, and because, personally as a building company myself, I can speak firsthand of some of the things that I've noticed and some of the things that I've appreciated as a builder. So without further ado, let's talk to Matt and Reece from Adaptive. Welcome to the Curious Builder podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today we have a repeat guest on the show. We've got Adaptive. We've got Matt Calvano, one of the founders, and Reece out in Colorado. Welcome, Adaptive.
Thanks for having us, Mark. Excited to be on the Curious Builder podcast. This is my maiden voyage.
It is. So Matt's a repeat guest, but I'm excited to have you guys on. So for those that aren't familiar with Adaptive, there's many that listen to the show that are. You're one of our main sponsors as well. We actually interviewed Matt a year and a half ago, episode 15. So if you want just like the full episode of everything that Adaptive can do, I'd recommend the listeners tune back to episode 15. We're going to do a brief 5-minute intro here just for those that are listening to this episode. It's going to be a great one. Just to hear what Adaptive is. And then we're going to talk about basically the progress. You're a new company. You're only 2 years. We're almost the same age. The Curious Builder and Adaptive are almost, we're basically twins on the playground, and, we're fastly growing into adulthood. So without further ado, Reece, why don't you give us a little 5-minute intro of what Adaptive is and who you guys are?
Yeah. So Adaptive, we are a financial technology company that has built automated financial software specifically for builders. We sync directly to QuickBooks. And when I mean automated financial software, what that really means is we're using artificial intelligence to eliminate the manual data entry that it takes for builders and their back office teams to categorize bills and receipts appropriately, make sure that they're getting the proper approvals and that bills are getting paid in a reasonable manner. Keeping QuickBooks up to date, ultimately keeping budgets and draws accurate as well. Along with reporting purchase orders, vendor compliance, payments, the whole gamut. So that's kind of the short snip of what Adaptive is.
I think another accurate summary is you guys make accounting sexy. It was funny because, right? I think that'd be a good tagline because I've been a client now for a year and a half, I think, or almost 2 years, I guess. And when I was first introduced to you, well, obviously I'm familiar with QuickBooks. Most builders are. It's the predominant, accounting software. But, it's a lot more than the P&Ls. It's all the processing and seeing like our draw time and the financial reporting time and really all the unsexy work that goes into preparing not only draws, which we'll get into that in a minute, but just getting all the information in accurately is kind of a slog. For it to all kind of be done pretty much automated. And also, I'm a big fan of user interfaces. I just think it essentially is a compliment to you because it's a lot like Apple. I think I heard a study once where they took like an iPad to like the jungles of Borneo, and they had like an 8-year-old, and within like 1 minute, the 8-year-old was intuitively figuring out how to like swipe through an iPad. I think what's really cool about Adaptive is how it's so easy to figure out. And if I can figure it out, trust me, other people can too. So anyway, that's my additional plug to what Adaptive is. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think Reece described it well. I think Mark, I would change it from sexy to easy, like I guess it could be sexy once you have nice reports, but more about easy. I was on a podcast with Paul Sanneman recently. He runs a business called Contractor Staffing Source. and he described Adaptive as kind of an AI cost accountant, which I thought was a good description, a good way to talk about our product. To your point, accounting is a big part of being a builder, right? If you think about being a builder, you kind of have two main jobs. You're like project managing the overall build, and then you are handling the payments and the accounting. A lot of builders are really, really strong at the project management and build side of things, but don't have the background in the accounting. So we're trying to do that for you. And that's what we're progressively trying to do more and more of over time is how do you use AI, automation, and to your point, really intuitive design to do the accounting for you. So that's what we're working on.
I would say, as someone who's been building for 20 years, you're right. I have a very strong building design background, and I did not prioritize enough the analysis of numbers, margin and markup, and really knowing your numbers. And we did really well, but it was almost like doing well by accident. It's like you just charge more, and it's kind of like speeding a ship faster with holes in it. And so you're like, well, man, if I go faster, you actually sink faster. But one thing that I have learned so much, my financial acuity has gone through the roof with the analysis and the reports and really just the awareness. And so much time goes into, I've always had a bookkeeper on staff just because it was something I didn't want to do. And I know a lot of builders actually do their own books as well. And especially the sole proprietors, if they're out in the field working and then at night they're doing their bookkeeping, it's just a lot of time. And, I work with a lot of, again, the people that are doing their own work in the field. And it's a little bit easier for me because I'm, essentially an office builder. I'm in the office a lot. So it's a little bit easier for me to do that. But I've noticed with my bookkeeping talent that I have is now they can spend a lot less time just manually pushing stuff around and compiling reports that you need to do. But if it can be handled with your AI technology, now they can spend more time looking at, analytics, trends, recommendations, cash flow, WIP reports, all the things that really open up at a much higher sophisticated level. And I think people with a big business background do really well in building because they come in maybe from, corporate America, and they understand WIP reports. They understand forecasting cash. They understand all of these things that if you started with a building background, you don't. And so I think really a big part of what you're doing is educating, the people that are already really good at building. And I think that's extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. On that point, Reece, you want to talk? I think the education piece. Do you want to talk a little bit about what Reece and I have been cooking up on our side here a little bit? What else we got new on the Adaptive side?
What are you referencing? Builders.
I'm talking about builders budgets and beers here. Got the early plug.
The early plug.
For sure. Well, yeah. I mean, so we're Matt and I were spinning up a podcast, Builders Budgets and Beers. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, YouTube. But I think even going back, Mark, to your point is yes, it's rarely, and this is when I'm talking to prospects and customers, it's rarely that the work is not getting done. Right. Usually in a building scenario, they are having the back office work getting done. They have somebody who's managing and owning that process. But when you really start to think about it, it can get intimidating, just even based on the timelines and the accessibility of data. Right. And that's one thing that I've learned just doing the podcast, obviously talking to builders purely about financials, yes, we're getting the information, but are we getting it at the end of the project? Or are we getting it on a monthly basis? Or are we getting it in real time to make better decisions on our business? And to tie this back into the Builders Budgets and Beers podcast, is the entire concept is to reduce the intimidation, or at least give a better opportunity for builders to say, I can own and manage my project financials on a real-time basis. That's what Adaptive is doing. That's what we're doing with Builders Budgets and Beers. And that's our entire goal over here as a company.
Well, and we'll talk maybe more towards the end of the podcast, specifically about why you started the podcast and even what you're finding. I think you've got 10 episodes in the bank, and you're sort of releasing. Are you guys going weekly or bi-weekly with that?
It'll be weekly.
It'll be weekly.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll hold that because I want to dive into that maybe towards the ends. But what I would really be interested in is, tell us a little bit what's changed from a year ago when Matt was on telling us about Adaptive to where you are currently. And then once we get through some of those things, I'd be kind of curious, what features are happening in the next, 6 to 12 months? Because you guys are, one thing that I really appreciate as a user of Adaptive is we get to work with you. And so it's a lot of the things that we are either struggling with or giving you real-time feedback on, you're immediately implementing it. Or I'll say, hey, we're looking at change orders, or we're looking at doing draws. And you're like, well, that's a great question, Mark. This was 6 months ago. We're about to actually launch the draw feature, which for me specifically, it used to take our office manager probably several hours to compile, and it would always take us a couple days. By the time we send it to the client, then they ask for backup data, they sign off on it, then you send it to the title company. It can honestly, no joke, be done in under a minute or two. The report, obviously, that you click a button on is seconds, but then of course you send an email to the client, they have to send an approval back, but all the information is all compiled in a nice formatted way. And one of the things about other softwares that you might use is you might upload something, but then the actual invoice gets dropped. So then when you're presenting the draw to the bank or to the client, they're like, oh, what is this $10,000 bill for? And you go to click on it and it's like error, and then you got to go find it. It's a nightmare knowing that all of the information, because you're uploading it, whether it's your phone, a dedicated email, there's so many easy ways to import it from the user standpoint. From my point as a builder, is now it's all right there. You right in front of the client. I can click on it, like boom, 10,000. Oh, that was the down payment on the cabinets. Okay, great, no problem. Let's pay it. And then it's just so easy. And so I think that is why you're finding such great adoption from other builders. And when they can see it, to me, I think that if you can get a demo, I imagine your close rates are really high. If you can actually get a demo with someone, like what do you know what your close rate is of actually demonstrating your software to people?
Yeah.
The close rates are high. Mark, let me give you a quick overview of what's changed since last time, and then let Reece go into some more of the details. I think that we were on here. When was that? March 2023. So over a year
I think
ago?
it was. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it comes back to what Reece was just talking about. Like, how do you get real time information into your projects? Right. That is the main thing that has changed. So if you go back to the beginning of the company, when we first identified the problem, what we heard from builders such as yourself was things like what Reece said. I never know if a project is profitable till the end. I don't really have clear visibility into what's going on. There are these errors happening, et cetera. And we said, well, why is that? Right? It's not that there isn't budgeting software that exists, right? There is budgeting software that exists. What's the problem? The problem is in all the day-to-day tasks of keeping the budget updated, right? So where we started was with a heavy focus on trying to automate and streamline bookkeeping. So a lot of our features were around bills and bill payments and receipts, the things that you were talking about. As we got those in place and those were working well, we then have spent a lot of time building out, all right, let's circle back. What do you want, builder? You want real-time budgets. Well, we're tracking all the information. We can give that to you now. So what we've been building is the budgeting side, the reporting side of the product. And that's what we've been investing a lot in over the past year.
Yeah. What other features have changed? I think one thing that's always kind of a marvel to me is like, you have someone working in the back room, working on coding, which always sounds really cool and mysterious because I don't do it, so I have no idea how to do it. How long does it take? Let's say like there's an idea. So I know you guys have, I think change orders are coming out at some point, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How long does something like that take to develop on the back end? So you already have sort of the base blocks of your pyramid. So let's just say it was day one, and I was saying, Reece, as a builder, we have online tracking software that we use with the client. But let's do change orders. From the time that is sort of like on your board saying, hey, our software developers are working on that, how long does it, I think it would just be interesting as a consumer and also a listener, how long does it actually take to develop something like that so that it's then now it's plugged into, I assume there's a beta test, so maybe even walk us through beta testing before it gets released.
Reece, do you want to talk about this?
I would like to say, dude, it's within 24 hours. I mean,
you're such a liar.
From idea to end the product is about 24 hours.
Such a liar.
Yeah.
No, Matt, you hit this one. I mean, because, and here's my take. I will add one piece on this and one thing I've grown to appreciate just being an adaptive as long as I have, and from the early stages and seeing the company progress, is how methodical you have to be with building software. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. There's a lot of consideration that goes into the architecture of the product and the future of where it's going to be going. So you do have a very firm foundation to accelerate through and do more of the kind of the fluffy features, as I say. So there's a lot of thought into it from that standpoint. But Matt, I mean, you're running with product on
yeah. So Mark, it's kind of, we talked about this last time, right? We talked about the trade-offs you make when building software. You can build quick, simple versions of products in short order, right? But then they might be very rigid and hard to build more functionality on top of over time. So it depends on what your vision is for the product line, right? So for example, lien waivers, we talked about that last year when we were considering developing it. We chose to not develop it because we wanted to do it really well. Now it's being developed. And when I say do it really well, right, there's a bunch that goes into a lien waiver. We could give you a simple standard one template that you can attach to bill payments. You can't edit it. You can send it to subs, but there's no conditional payment associated with it. So it's kind of like separate from the payment. You can't include it into the draws after the fact, right? We could have built that really simple, but we wanted to do all those things. So we built a pretty comprehensive lien waiver product. And then that product takes longer to build, right? Because you're sitting down and you're saying, I'm going to build a really strong foundation to build an amazing lien waiver product over time.
This right here is why you are having a software company and why I could never be an employee of Adaptive. I can sell it. I could never be on the inner side because me, I'd be like, get that done. I want your 24-hour turnaround. Yep, add it. Be like, it's terrible. Yeah. I don't care. I want to sell it. Be like, actually, that's a really bad idea. I mean, I appreciate the intention is where I'm really complimenting you on. Is like just hearing you talk about it. It's so counter to my own personal nature that I really appreciate the thoughtfulness. And totally. I guess it's true of building a house, right? I mean, someone says, hey, I want to build a house like right now. Or like, no, you need to spend 4 to 6 months in design, architecture, interior selections, maybe a year, depending on how complicated the home is. And then guess what? This house is going to take a year, 2 years to build, depending again on the size. And if you rush it, you're not going to be happy with the end. Actually, it's very analogous to building a home. It's no wonder you guys build for builders because it's actually quite similar. You know, you have to obviously start with the foundations and, even painting, right? I had a painting contractor on a couple episodes ago, or actually had a painting business, Brad Robinson from Bradford Homes down in Atlanta. His first company was a painting company. And we were talking about the number of coats of paint. I like 2 coats of primer and 2 coats of finish because it just has this nice buttery finish. But again, if you're not building it up right, the end product is going to look like junk. And so actually, so many of these analogies work for what you just said, Matt.
And I'll throw on that just because that's really important to the consumer, right? And when we're talking to prospects, we're talking to builders, and they ask about like how long does it take to turn around product and this and that. I think as a builder, when you are choosing a software provider, it's going back into what's important to you. Is it speed of delivery or is it long-term quality of product? Because there certainly are softwares out there that are building names for themselves in terms of very quick turnaround. But what does the longevity of that product actually look like in the future build out? You also mitigate a lot of risk, right? Of shipping out product way too early, not as methodically built out. And then you have a bunch of consumers that are saying, you rolled out a software, you rolled out a feature, you rolled out a product that isn't applicable, isn't relevant. This isn't what we wanted. This isn't solving problems for us. So that's, again, going back to Matt's point of we're a very intentional software company from that standpoint of really wanting to anchor into what is the actual problem at hand. It might be not just the pain, but what is causing that pain, and digging into it to deliver a great, clean experience for the consumer.
So would you say what, 6 months to develop, 4 months, a year? What would you say? I mean, each one of these is going to be slightly different, but like, what is a reasonable expectation for your own team to say, hey, lien waivers, this is really when we seriously started working on it, and now it's going to be unleashed?
Lien waivers is going to be about, it depends. So it also depends on like how many engineers you have working on it, right? So like you can't, it's how many are working on it, how complicated is it, et cetera. I think the lien waivers, the build itself to get the version 1 of lien waivers out is about 2 months of engineering time. And prior to that, there was about 6 weeks of product work up front of scoping everything out in terms of how we wanted to be built, deciding what would be the initial version, and then what we can layer on top of that after the fact.
Cool.
But then, I think that the point Reece made, I think, is a good one on, how software companies have operated, where they'll, in the Mark D. Williams software company, it would be like, build a feature, sell it, get like, just so you can get the customer to give you their credit card. And then a lot of those companies also will sign you up for annual contracts. So you're kind of locked in, right? So that seems great in the demo, and then you get into the product, it doesn't work well. We're trying to have the product sell itself. And you can see that in our pricing model. We just do monthly subscription, no commitments. If you don't like it, leave, So
that's pretty attractive. I have to imagine that leads to a pretty high sale rate too. So Reece has got to be pretty happy with that, right? I mean, it's kind of like, giving a ketchup giving a popsicle to, someone in the desert, like, okay, that's a no brainer.
Yeah. Well, and I will say too, like a part of it, and it's real. It sounds salesy, but it's the truth. Like it takes us longer to sell Adaptive than it does to set it up. And that's
a great line.
Well, it does. I mean, seriously, like, and we're even piloting like on the front end of our sales cycles of like, hey, if you want a demo out of your own data, email us within 24 hours before and we'll get everything synced up and literally run a demo on your data. And that's a testament to the quality of product, right? Because to Matt's point with like these annual contracts and subscriptions, I mean, there's a ton of literature out there in terms of pricing models and how do you run this out. But you could get sold a monthly subscription, but you're also looking at a 6 to 18 month implementation timeline before you actually can get on the product to the point of imposing value, right? So that's where Matt's saying we want the product to sell itself, as we make it extremely easy to get into. Our onboarding is 2 to 3 hours across a 15-day period before our customers are crossing thresholds of adoption. And we, maybe to our default, or to our fault, not default, it's very easy to get out of because of the quality of product that we have built. So
that's amazing. What is, from growth of clients? So you've been around for coming up on what, 2.5 years? What, from a year ago, where were you client wise, and where are you at today?
Yeah. So I started with Matt, Frank, and Henry in January 2023. And at that point, they had converted about 10 of their beta customers into paying customers. Okay, so we had not sold to the public at that point in January 2023. Today,
so that means I was a beta client then, because I was in 2022.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Cool. You were one of the conversion clients.
You're an alpha client.
Yeah.
Forget beta. I want alpha. Yeah. I like that. Thank you.
We're getting ready to send out badges, so you can have an alpha.
Adaptive is the alpha adaptive, double A,
that's
double
right.
squared,
that's
A
right.
squared.
That's right.
Okay, sorry.
2 A's right on the front pocket.
Yeah. So you've got 10, a year and a half ago. Where are you at today?
Yep. We're at about 320 customers.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. 320 customers over 25, 30 states. We're tapping into Hawaii. Hawaii's big, huge in Hawaii. But no, it's been great. It's been great. And I will say too, is like, in terms of the volume and like in our sales process, how we really do make sure to get the right fits in, is we go through a lot of process scoping, right? We really want to make sure that the consumer understands that here's our current process today, and they can start to understand, because it is a pretty disruptive product. And going back to the point of the work's getting done, right? It's kind of the, do I want to install subfloor with a hammer or with a nail gun type concept? And that's where you really start to dig in with the process and getting the consumer to understand this bill is touching 3 different hands before it ever gets recognized as a payable, which adds time to what we're doing. So when we go through these sales processes, we want to make sure that these are consumers that are forward thinking, they are disruptive, they are focusing on how do we make the most out of our overhead, but even more so, what's the value of accessibility to data for these consumers? Because that's where the money's made. It's truly the difference. Go ahead.
Have you guys seen the movie Ford Ferrari?
Yes.
Do you remember do you remember the scene when Matt Damon was with Mr. Ford? He was going to get fired, and he said, "Why should I not fire you?" And he goes, "I was thinking about that very question." And then he points to the red folder. He goes, "And as I was sitting in your lobby for a half hour, I saw that red folder right there pass through 20 different hands, and everyone was looking at it before it got to you. And his comment was, is you can't run this by committee. I need to work with you directly." And if people have seen that movie, it illustrates, I think, my point really well, because that's just what you've done. You've eliminated all these 20, 30 other steps. And now it's you as the owner of your company interacting directly with this widget you're making. In this case, it's a house, not a Ferrari. And, and you can have real-time impact.
I was talking to a builder, Mark, that it was literally a matter of 2 weeks that scorched his margin. It was a bill that got approved by a project manager. Bookkeeper paid that sub. 2 weeks later, they realized that they were over on a PO. They didn't have that data, and they overpaid from what they had initially scoped out on the project, and that came out of margin.
Wow.
So it's those types of concepts that builders are like, yes, it happens and it hurts every time it does, but it's just been built into, that's just the cost of doing business. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the reality anymore. You don't have to run a business like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that point by Reece, I'm glad you brought that up. That's so part of the goal here is to get real-time financial information so you can make smarter decisions, right, with your business. But then when you have this kind of offline, email-based, paper-based bookkeeping process or manual bookkeeping process disconnected with your accounting software, it does open you up to a lot of errors. So we onboarded a builder recently. They connected their QuickBooks. They saw the budget page and realized that they had completely forgot to bill for like a $6,000 purchase. right, on a cost plus job. And they're just like, oh, well, there's my adaptive subscription back, right?
Yeah.
There we go. There,
It's really not hard to tie an ROI back to this thing. And I think a lot of people, either they get excited or they get intimidated about what adaptive is doing from like an automation standpoint. But I really do think that the value comes when you become a customer and you start to see what that accessibility to data does. And then you can really start to quantify what those $6,000, $20,000, $100,000 mistakes really are doing to your business.
I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about, obviously, especially in the day and age we're in now, everyone talks about AI this, AI that,
Mhm.
and I'll just speak for myself. I mean, I understand it stands for artificial intelligence. I understand Chat GPT. You ask it to do something, it's a language model, so it just goes blah blah and just spits out a bunch of stuff. Can you speak to? I think a lot of builders are, to your point, they're intimidated by AI. They don't understand it. They don't know how to use it. And I think a lot of people don't think they use AI all that much. But I think people maybe partner with companies that do use AI, and they might not realize that they are becoming efficient by partnering with companies that really know the tech space. And I'll use, obviously, it's going to, us using you, right? So someone asked me the other day, Mark, how much do you use AI? And I was like, well, yeah, I draft what I'm going to write in LinkedIn, and I had rewrite with AI. My wife even commented because she always comments on my English, and she's like, hey, you're learning something better. And she's like, wait a minute, did you have AI rewrite that for you? I'm like, yeah. And she was just like, whatever. But the point is, we're starting to use it more and more, even builders, which aren't necessarily known as being cutting edge, but our partners. Then I rephrase the question. I'm like, actually, one of my my entire financial system is actually is built on some AI technology, and I don't understand it. And I'd kind of turn the mic over to you. Explain to us, as your clients, but to those listening out there that aren't as familiar with it, how does AI, how are you harnessing it? How are you using it? And could Adaptive even be a company
Oh,
without AI? This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 19 and a half years, I've been building homes, and 95% of all of my homes have used Pella windows. I couldn't be happier to call them a partner in our builds and our remodels. Whether you're an architect, a designer, or a remodeler, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. They can fit old homes, new homes, reclaimed, commercial, and really everything in between. Pella is a company that we trust and that we recommend to our clients. Additionally, in management, Peter and Ed have just been absolute fantastic people to work with, as well as mentors to me personally. So when it comes time to look for a window, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. Find more at pellanorthland.com. Also, if you're interested, you can hear episode 1 where I interview Peter and Ed together for a great listen on business and Pella windows. Lake Society Magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society Magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
so I can give you. I'll just give you some an overview of what I think that AI can be good at, and then how we're using it in the product. Okay, so generative AI is quite good at giving a lot of context and information, and they're able to draw conclusions from it or draw fairly accurate guesses from that information. So let's take your email inbox as an example of a collection of information, right? You are probably receiving bills in your email inbox. You are probably receiving receipts in your email inbox. You are probably receiving quotes from subs in your email inbox. There's probably some back and forth about what's happening on a job in your email inbox, et cetera, right? There's a lot of information that is in that email inbox. And if you think about the job of a bookkeeper, what part of their job is to scan that inbox and figure out what is in there, right? So this is a job that AI could be quite good at, right? Is that, oh, I see this document, that looks like a bill. I see that document, that looks like a PO. I see that document, that looks like a receipt, right? That is something that AI can be quite good at, right? Boom, you've eliminated the job of scanning the email inbox, downloading files, manually moving them to a system, because you just identify it and pull it into our system, right? The second piece of the bookkeeping job would be then, okay, what is this for? What is this for? Meaning what job, what cost code, is the work done, et cetera, right? That's, again, something that AI can be quite good at, because now if you introduce the context of, well, we have your QuickBooks file with all your job codes, we have the cost codes you've added to the budget, it can start to say, this looks like a bill. I see the client's name on the invoice. I see this address that relates to that client in the accounting software. Let's assign it to the job, right? So those are the ways that we're kind of using AI in the product. So quite good at that, right? A second piece that I think I personally use GPT for and is quite good at is providing you with advice, right? And that advice is kind of the sum total of like the wisdom of the internet, right? So an example of providing you advice is cost codes, right? A lot of builders will come to us and say, like, what's an ideal cost code list for me, right? GPT is quite good at that, and we're kind of working on a tool that will build this into the product where you can just, hey, maybe I'm not thrilled with my current cost code list. Maybe I need to clean up my cost codes in QuickBooks, whatever. Just upload your budget. GPT that can then take all the information of like, well, here's the NAHB, here's the CSI, here's what I've read on this blog post from these builders. You respond, well, I think that's too much detail for me. They're like, okay, we can simplify it. Give me some more information. Here's a great list. So those are the buckets, right? I think it's good at like figuring things out, coding, that type of work, as well as kind of providing advice. And there will be multiple other use cases as we build the company.
And so what is it? So and I think that's a great answer. What is it specifically that AI is being used for in Adaptive?
So the two things that I mentioned to start, right? So like basically trying to eliminate the process of data entry, just completely eliminating data entry from what is this? What type of transaction is this? And what's it for? Which in and of itself saves a huge amount of time. And then the cost codes we're working on now.
Okay. Yeah, what were you going to say, Reece?
I was just going to add, I mean, even just like for a more applicable like example, like in Adaptive, you literally forward bills into our product, and then our AI does the data entry to Matt's point. I mean, it's scraping the vendor, the invoice number, dates, due dates, amounts.
That's what appealed to me. We have a sworn construction statement. I think ours is, 180 lines long. And, one of the ones that's always sort of a tricky, actually, for like, we've hired a new bookkeeper about a year ago now. He's doing a great job, but, and he was actually had a building background, but before him, I had two office bookkeepers that were not, and they would always have to, in our weekly meeting, they would have to check in with us. So you'd get a trim bill, which we have trim material and we have trim labor. They're both under trim, but under different subcategories in the sworn. And, inevitably you would see something that was way out of budget and you're like, we only had $20,000 in budget, but that was at 40,000. And then you open it up and you're like, wait a minute, you put the trim material in the trim labor just because it had a similar name. Where I actually personally have never seen it go wrong in Adaptive. It always somehow was able to figure it out. And part of it could be which I assume the vendor, like we use a company called Trademark. So it gets smarter. It learns, obviously, I would imagine. Hence it's adapting to your systems. And so, when we obviously review it, we obviously have it before we approve a bill. I've found that one of the things, we're a small company, but I could see how this thing scales amazing. A small company I have a company of 4, like I'm going to be pretty involved with a lot of things. It still speeds it up, but I'm still involved. But if you have a company of 20, 50, 100, your chain of command, I've never owned a company that big, but the way we used to do it, I mean, if you have to wait once a week for, let's say, bill pay, I mean, that could take like a couple hours to like go through and be like, hey, project manager, vet this, vet that. Or even, I bet you people used to do it with big paper stacks and then they would go drop it. I mean, that's such a waste of time. All of that is automatic. I mean, it's no joke to say that you're saving hours a day. And you quantify that over a year. I mean, it's mind blowing at how efficient it becomes and accurate. Not only efficient, but it becomes more accurate.
Totally. Well, and I think that's the big piece. Like one of our investors, they came out with an article or like a blog. It was a few months ago, and they were talking about how artificial intelligence is getting introduced into multiple different verticals, and specifically, it's very applicable for financial processes. It's not to the point of like totally eliminating people, and specifically in construction accounting, right? There's so much nuance to it, and understanding like, where does this need to go? Where does that need to go? So this goes back even to how intuitive of a product we've built, of you have far more control over your process, specifically in like approval workflows. You forward a bill into Adaptive, we pull off all the information, give you a preliminary job cost, and then the insights that we give you based on the criteria of that bill, it will quarterback it and send out approvals for this bill is for this job, and this job is being managed by this project manager, and then it has to go to the office manager of the owner. So now everybody is having the chance in a real-time scenario to go through and make any adjustments or make decisions based on what they have, so they can catch miscategorization issues, which enhances the quality of data that's going into your accounting software. That's ultimately impacting how we're budgeting and how we're drawing for receivables. But even more so, it's to the paper folder side. It's not even the time, like when you ask somebody, how much time does it take you to track bills? The answer is always interesting. Sometimes it's brutally honest, and they're like, it takes me hours a week. Other times they're like, it's like a 10, 15-minute task. It's not a big deal to me. It's when we forget that it might be a 10, 15-minute task for this individual, but then it's on the desk of somebody who can't get to it until Friday. And all that time that's involved of this portion of the job is done here, but now I have to wait for this other individual to get involved to complete this process, to then go back to the original person to get everything in. Those are those timelines that Adaptive shrinks down significantly. And then that's where you start to eliminate those those situations of, had I known that this was over a PO amount 2 weeks ago, we might not have paid the bill, and we missed this communication chain, and now we're chewing through margin. Right.
I
That's
like
where we start to mitigate
an analogy that comes to mind, going back to, home builders, which obviously is a primary audience here to the podcast, would be scheduling. When you
Totally.
project manage a schedule, let's say it's a year build, there is obviously some overlap, between let's say, you're at rough end. So you've got, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC, and you give some people some leeway here. But if you are able to not have any downtime, I mean, we obviously, building a home outside in the elements, you need some margin for error there, because you've got weather delays, you've got other things that come up. But I know one thing that national builders do way better than us, and to me, it's a little ruthless. I personally wouldn't have the personality to do it. I mean, they set their schedule, and you either meet their schedule or you're done. Like, I'm sorry, you have 3 days to do X, Y, Z. And if you don't, like, okay, well, that's the only time you get. And like, they don't allow for any fluff, but what they're able to do is take a 12-month build and come down to like 8 months. Now, that's a whole nother debate.
Yes.
I don't really build in that arena, but I can appreciate the efficiency of it, because now they are super dialed in on their cash burn, their flow, all those different things. And on a financial, the way you build your financial processes is just becoming really effective with scheduling. If you want to does that seem like a good analogy?
It totally does, but I think even more so is like, it's giving the non-production builder, the large national builder, the opportunity to run like one.
Yeah.
Right. And they're able to do that as a large national builder because they have the volume, they have the staff, they have the processes and the clout in the space to hold these types of trade partners and these types of processes accountable. And that's, again, what Adaptive is doing. It's giving that accessibility to run a business closer to a more efficient business with artificial intelligence and intuitive software.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just because I have several other questions, we'll maybe move on from there to, you guys just publicized, you had, I don't know if it's your second Series A, and I don't, not being in financial America, I don't totally understand how this works. I know you raised a lot of money, and having more money is good, as be a builder, if I got a bunch of investors together, I was able to go buy land positions, I was able to build spec homes. So I get like that side of it, but can you kind of speak what goes, because it seems kind of cool and mysterious, but like, what goes into a Series A fundraising, or like, like, explain to us that aren't from Manhattan and don't understand how this all works. Can you explain how this all works? I find it. Matt's explained this to me, by the way, like 5 times, and I can never really grasp like what he's saying. But
Matt has been getting chewed up about this the day I started. Just Stanford, Morgan Stanley, blah, blah.
Yeah. Somehow it happened along the way. So Mark, you're right. So we raised $19 million, which is great, right? Software, as we talked about earlier, if you're going to do it well, can be a little expensive. So now we're in business for the long term. There's no risk with our company, and right, we're going to be able to pursue all the things we want to pursue on the product side, which is super exciting.
So let me pause right there. So you raised 19 now, but you had original funding. So how many rounds of funding have you gotten at this point?
Two main rounds of funding. We've raised $26 million in total. Okay. So I can give you the summary of what is happening at these different stages you might hear in the news. Our initial round of funding was in April 2022. That was our seed round. And then most recently we did the 19 million. That was our Series A round. Okay. Generally, when people think about seed, what is happening at that stage is you have an idea, right? You have an idea and some early proof points that your idea might be legit. But your goal is then to go out and prove what they call product market fit, which means your idea was good, you're solving customer problems, they want to pay you for it. Okay. So that's what we've set out to prove. And I think going from the 10 to 300 customers Reece mentioned, that was the proof that we had done that, right? Mm-hmm. Once you get to that level, you're like, okay, you found something here. Can you really grow the business? Can you get the word out? Can you scale it? That's what Series A is about. And that's why you go and raise a Series A round, right? Is we got something good. There's a lot more we want to build and we need to invest in sales and marketing. Here's the money to go do that. So those are the differences. Seed is idea. Series A is good idea. Grow it.
So seed, yeah, I mean, it makes sense now when you say it that was should have done that last time. This makes sense now. Maybe I've only heard it 800 times, but I'm thinking of a plant, throwing out the seeds. Now we've seen the buds of life and now we're cultivating it. Or, hey, we have the infrastructure. Yeah. And now you had to create a podcast, Builders, Budgets and Beers, which we'll get into we're Curious Builder, all the people that you've helped support to also essentially work, because most of it's been word of mouth, I would imagine, which is really powerful because the conversion rate on word of mouth obviously is going to be way higher, referrals, things like that when you can speak to it. But now it's marketing and that, I would imagine that's going to be jet fuel. How does that translate to down the road? I mean, is the next Series B? I mean, did it go all the way to Z? Like, how far do these series go?
Well, you could keep writing the series book, Series B, C, D, E. The thing is though, when you raise money, as you know, right, they will the investors get ownership in the company, right? So it's not always a good idea. You don't want to just raise money just for raising money's sake. You want a good reason to raise the money. And I think we have a lot of cash right now, so there's a chance that we won't have to raise another round. I mean, we'll see how things go, but we have a lot of cash. I think we've been pretty efficient. We might not have to do, Series B, Series C. So
so again, more of a technical question. Do you you have 19 million? Do you get 19 million and you don't use it all the way? You put it in a bank account and you get interest on it? Or is it like a bank when I'm building a spec home, I just draw the money I need as I need it? Like, where does this, 19 million?
Yeah. So the money is fully transferred to our bank account. And
cut a check.
We don't even sell software. We just make interest income. That's what we do. That's our main business line. No. Yeah. They give you the cash right when it closes. It's not a draw product. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious because I was like, we're considering a spec home right now. And one way to do it is borrow all of it and then just, use against. But obviously a lot of builders if I'm going to buy from a bank, I want to pay as little interest as possible. So I'm going to kind of drag it out. So I was just curious. So, okay. That answers that
for sure. No, yeah, Mark, that's the key difference, right? With debt versus equity, right? If we took all the cash up front and we were paying interest on it, that would be pretty silly, right? There's no interest, right? This is equity investment. They bought ownership in the company.
And I assume, like anything, I mean, if you're going to have partners, you have to, you're weighing, hey, I need the money to grow the business and I'm giving up some of my company. And so, you're having partners essentially, right? I assume most of them become non-voting partners or not, because we still, you would want to retain the autonomy to create your product. I mean, the people believe in you, right? And so you as a company want to be able to, do what you need to do. And while you appreciate their financial support, it's not like you want, Bob Wellington III from Tennessee. I don't know if there's a Bob Wellington III. It sounds like a very regal name. And, but you don't want him advising you unless you ask him, right? I mean, is that correct? I mean, most of these Series A funds are really, you've already proven the proof of concept. You get some of our ownership, but you don't necessarily get a seat at the table to make the decisions on what we're going to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say at a high level, Series A, early stage venture capital, they're really betting on the team, right? They're not trying to come in and change things. There's not that much to change, right? That you have proven an initial
Right.
product market fit, and then you want to grow it. So there's not really many operations in place that they want to alter. So they are betting on you. So that's like the attitude coming in. I do think that you can have different types of partners. Some partners will be fully hands off and just give you the money, and then wish you well and check in every once in a while. Or you can work with partners that really understand the space. I think the investors we partnered with are really focused on what we do. Right, they've invested in many other software companies that have done quite well, Zoom, Salesforce, etc. So they've seen best practices in software, and they only make a few investments per year. So they've actually been really good partners to us, which is great. Right.
Yeah, I mean, a strategic partner. I mean, then it's obviously different. Not only do they have a seat at the table, I found out recently, and this is just for my own, I have a small team, as I've mentioned previously. I have found, so we're looking at doing a spec home, and I'm looking at bringing on a partner just for that one spec home. And, we're going to make a lot less money on it if it goes, but honestly, I'm really excited about it because I'm doing it for two reasons. One is I want to build a home that fits our brand and I want to sell homes off of it. But then two, honestly, it's kind of more fun to go with a team and being sort of a solopreneur. I spend a lot of time not alone. I mean, I have a big community. I'm very extroverted, as you guys know. But the point is like sometimes it gets a little lonely at the top, and not having a team. Like, I appreciate partners. I think I've been conditioned early on. My dad was a builder for a long time, and he's not wrong. Just that partnerships can be difficult. Sometimes if you have to either split the profit with 10 people, or, if you have 10 people having an equal vote at a table, it's really hard to get stuff done. However, there is something really exciting about having a team where it's a camaraderie and it's encouragement and you pick up other people's ideas. So, there are, like anything, there's pros and cons. And right now I'm at a point in my career where I really love this quote I heard recently, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And I'm really embracing that go together thing. And it's just, more enjoyable. Even the podcast has taught me a lot. I mean, you guys early on believed in the messaging and what we were going to do, with the Curious Builder. And frankly, it's gone way, way beyond that I could even imagine. I think we've got 7 platforms now. Some of them we haven't announced to the public, about most of them, but it's like, knowing that you essentially are making a judgment on a company and a person and what their vision is and really what their core thing is, whether it's Adaptive or a building company, or in this case, the Curious Builder podcast, it's like, hey, I just want to be a part of that. And then you kind of coalesce these people that are sort of like super fans, but they also have a vested interest. And there's something really, really powerful about that. I wish I would have discovered that earlier on in my career. And for those listening, you don't have to launch a podcast. You can if you want. We'll talk maybe about budgets, builders and beers here next. But I just feel like we live in a day and age where collaboration is becoming like the new currency. And I've said it a lot. I'm not the one who generated the quote, but I love it. It's, collaboration over competition. And I feel like when you really own that, like, it's kind of like the safety net is gone. You've got jet fuel and you are flying Superman with a cape. And it feels really good. And it's really, I don't know, it's a different kind of energy that I'm really excited about.
No, Mark, I totally agree. I mean, I honestly, I feel a pretty strong bond with you, honestly, being one of our alpha beta customers early on, buying into us, believing us, promoting us. And then, we've got to help you with Curious Builder. It's honestly, that's what makes this fun. I mean, Reece joining early, we couldn't have gotten here without Reece. It's fun. That's like a huge fun part about it. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about builders, budgets, and beers. We've got about 15 minutes left on the pod. So, what was it that, you guys obviously helped us launch the Curious Builder. You guys have been you've been seeking a lot of podcast interviews. Obviously, that's part of a natural word of mouth, marketing strategy that's very effective as well. But what made you want to start one yourself? And then, tell me a little bit about your experience so far, as you've kind of, how's your perception changed about podcasts? I mean, you obviously supported mine, you've listened to it, you've been on. How is it different now being a host versus being a guest? I think, listeners would find that interesting.
Yeah. Reece.
So
give it a
I can. I have a meeting with a prospect starting here in like a minute. I have the Zoom meeting pulled up though. So if they join, I'll have to jump. But the entire intention was to educate. right? It was to educate and also bring on guests that our audience could identify with to make tracking project financials seem more palatable, right? Something that they could actually attain. And it didn't seem like this big task that it's kind of getting done and we're making money and, we're getting all this stuff into an opportunity where it's like, there are fixed price builders out there that really view a budget as, I don't lose money on jobs, I lose money on line items, right? And motivate builders to view those projects that way. Cost plus builders looking at it and saying, you can't plus what you don't cost, right? I have to track every single receipt, every single bill to ensure that I'm making the markup, which carries through into my margin as a business. So that was the big intention of the podcast, was to bring guests on that the audience could identify with and share stories of, this is where we've lost, this is where we've won, this is the way that we can do this successfully.
Yeah. How and right now, tell us. I mean, what I like about it, I think I was one of your first guests, if not the 1st guest. And tell us a little bit about. I mean, obviously I love iterations. So you've got the 3 Bs, right? Builders, budgets, and beers. Tell us a little bit about the beer portion of it, because I totally got that wrong. Plus, I'm training for a race, and so it's like I wasn't gonna have a beer. So I'll tell my side of the story, and then you tell your side of what you wanted. Or maybe I should go first because I'm the one that messed it up. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're basically like, hey, we want this to be casual, very approachable. We want to relate to the builders in their space. We don't want numbers to just be this dumb thing. We want people to tune in and be relaxed. And so they're like, we're also going to ask our guests like what their favorite beer is. And then this is where I got the messaging wrong. I thought you were going to send me like, DoorDash, like a favorite beer to try it, and then we were both gonna like basically open it up on speaker, right? Like some IPA from Colorado where you are, or whatever, some bespoke beer, and then I was gonna drink it, you were gonna drink it, we're both gonna relate it. And so I told you to get a like a bubble tea, like a chai, like some sort of a bubble tea or whatever,
which I did,
which
and it was
you
delicious.
Did, but I'm sitting in my studio like, where is this bubble tea? Like, how am I gonna drink it? And then you come on and you're drinking it. I'm like, well, where's mine? You're like, this isn't for you. This is for me to rate the builder's favorite beer.
It was a
I'm
flop.
Like, I mean, man, this is
logistics.
such a one-sided relationship. I thought I was going to get a bubble tea out of the deal, but anyway, I thought that was really funny. So, with that in mind, how have your other guests enjoyed that portion of the recordings?
I mean, that's been the same. We've kind of shied away from it because there was a lot of logistics. I mean, we kind of went into like, what is the beer of choice from the listener, and then ultimately, how do we get beer? I mean,
does bubble tea,
Well, and so here's the thing. We were even talking like, wait, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you did cut out kind of slightly, okay. But
I think the big piece, there we go. See, we still have technical difficulties every once in a while. But it was like guys up in like New England, and they're like, yeah, this is my favorite brew from this brewery up here. And it's like, well, shit, now I'm in Denver. Like, we got to figure out how to get these beers to a liquor store in Denver. So now we're just, casually drinking beers and enjoying them. We're still finding our
it'll take you a while to find your stride. I just thought it's a cool concept. I don't think you should get rid of it. I just thought it's unique, and obviously you're finding out. I'm waiting for someone to be like, my favorite beer is from the island of Borneo.
That's
and you're like,
really
man, it's gonna be like $5,000 beer to get it shipped over here or whatever. So. Anyway, how are you finding the episodes in terms of recording, and what was your goal? I mean, you wanted to, are your listeners, you just really want to dive into financials, or what are your guests saying about the show?
Yeah, I mean, the goal, the gap we saw was there's really no great content out there around construction financials specifically, discussed in a digestible way. So we did want to focus on financial topics, right? So that customers can use it as a resource, and hopefully also, enjoy listening to Reece talk. But yeah, I mean, what we're kind of orienting the podcast around is what is the theme, what is the key lesson from each of these. Mm-hmm. For the first one with you, we talked about your experience getting a loan and the whole journey of how that affected you around the financial crisis with the remodels, and we decided to create the podcast around debt, right? So if you go to your episode, you'll see an article explaining what are the 3 things you need to know about debt when you're thinking about whether you should take out debt.
Reece, can I stop him for a second to ask you about this? Like, does Matt have like an eidetic memory where he remembers every conversation he's ever had? Because right now, Matt, you're like my wife. You're like, you quoted your
Yes.
episode from 2 years ago that you recalled what we talked about. Like, I have zero idea what we talked about, other than we talked about something with adaptive. And my wife has always given me crap because every Monday I re-listen to the episode when it airs, and she's like, "Well, you were just in the conversation like 3 weeks ago. Can you not remember what was talked about?" I'm like, I'm interviewing someone. Like, I don't know. I'm sort of focused on, the
Mark,
general feel of it. But it seems like Matt remembers everything that's ever been said.
brains work very differently. If I've learned anything from working at Adaptive, brains work very differently, and that goes back into having like a very strong team. To answer your question, yes. All of our co-founders, all of our team members are exceptionally smart, and one of Matt's strengths is remembering everything like he read it out of the dictionary.
It's impressive. I mean, it's an
Yeah.
impressive skill. It really is. It's one that I don't have. Why do salesmen usually not have it, Reece? I feel like you and I are probably more akin to that. Would you agree?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, I would say that I'm pretty sharp myself. I remember some stuff. But I don't know why sales guys are like this. I don't know. We're just EQ heavy. We're looking to identify and work with humans, and the analytical memorization, read a sentence from a book 6 years ago and remember it, just is not in my repertoire.
See, I will say this. I mean, you tell me if you agree with this, and I think everyone can. Well, we'll see how you react to it. My wife says it all the time. I actually feel like it's a very powerful statement that people will forget what you say, except for Melissa and Matt. But they'll never forget how you made them feel. I would say I'm a big feel. Like if I meet somebody, like I'll know, like, hey, I felt very comfortable around that person, or I really support that person, or I like what that person is doing. I'll lose some of the specifics around it. But I maybe in sales, I'm trying to make pretty quick decisions on, especially like a big open house. If I have 100, 200 people through, or sometimes we'll have 1,000 or 1,500 people through a house in a weekend. I cannot give every person the amount of time that they need or deserve, frankly, to just talk about their house. So I'm triaging extremely quick. It's 5 to 10 seconds. Like, okay, do I spend 5 minutes with those people? How much time? Because I can't spend 5 minutes with 1,500 people. Clearly that doesn't work. Do you feel like, would you agree with that sentiment, Reece, in terms of like how you relate to people's feelings or how you feel about them?
Totally. And I mean, I think that's like, Matt mentions that he's from Michigan. I mean, I'm from Nebraska, and I put a lot of clout into that, just of like, in Nebraska, you don't have many people to talk to. So when you get the chance to, you make the most of it, type of thing. And totally. I mean, I'm all about, really listening to people, a lot of active listening, like having true, genuine conversation with people. And people do. I mean, they make those comments, Mark, about like, oh, we had a great experience with Reece, or we had a great experience with Caitlin and Nate. We had a great experience with your sales team, is because you really do. I mean, you have to genuinely convey the care and their experience and their needs, and making sure that they are getting into it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just like a natural characteristic for salespeople, at least good quality salespeople.
Yeah.
Well, I think you can obviously do both. It's not that Matt is an uncaring, AI robot,
No,
with
shut up, Mark.
physical form. But I mean, it is interesting seeing people's skills on display. I mean, I'm really impressed. I think maybe I tend to almost get more impressed with skills I don't have. So that's why it's like when Matt started bringing it up previously in the episode, I'm like, I think he remembers everything that has ever been said to him, which is a super useful trait. So anyway,
and now let's dig into this, Matt. Since you're the science project here, you're the wonder child here. What is this? Just like you read a lot of books? Like how do you get good at this, or is this just something you've always been?
Get good at memory?
Yeah, get like seriously, like you're like, yeah, March of 23, we talked about this topic, and it was about debt, and there was 3.3% over here, and there was $250,000 over there. Like, how do you do that?
I don't know. I think that there's not many guides on memory. Generally, if like things are interesting, I think I'll remember them. I think a lot of like that's what, right? Memory is kind of tied to emotion. Like interesting things will drum up some level of emotion, right? Or difficult situations will drum up a level of emotion that creates the memory associated with them. But I don't think I have any tips on amping it up. Maybe get more emotional.
More emotional. I need to get more emotional.
Yeah, get more emotional. You need to cry more on your sales calls, Reece. Yeah. You need to, if you meet him in person, maybe snuggle that beard up a little bit. Be like, usually before we break the ice, I'd like you to stroke my beard and see how coarse it is. or here's some beard conditioner. Well,
Yeah.
maybe in the last 4 minutes, why don't we talk about what's what's exciting for the rest of the year? What are you guys excited about? Either adaptive or personally. I know Matt, maybe Matt, you go first. You've got some big family changes happening that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm excited about. Going to become a dad. So got that
boy.
coming up soon. Baby boy.
When do you guys do?
In January.
Okay, so a little bit of time.
Pretty
That's
awesome.
amazing. I'm super happy for you. That's congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
But I forgot the due date. No, I'm just kidding. I remember.
It wasn't emotional enough. The birth of your child was not emotional enough for you to register a memory.
Yeah.
How about you, Reece?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly, I'm going to spend a lot of time work. I'm excited about what's happening over here at Adaptive. Personally, I mean, my wife and I, we've got some pretty cool vacations. We're going to go up to the Northeast here at the end of the summer. We're going to be hosting Thanksgiving at our home in Denver. So I'm excited about that. But I would say the things I'm most excited about is we're really starting to scale out and build out our sales team. And we have a lot of really solid hires, a lot of really solid employees contributing, and I'm excited to see what we do with the challenge ahead of us. So getting that scaled down is going to be the big piece, and just help as many fine contractors of America as we can.
I like that. That's a pretty good reason. Well, we'll have everything tagged in the show notes. We'll have your social handles, your websites. Hopefully after people listen to this episode, if they haven't before, they're going to schedule that demo. And, the fact that you can go month to month is kind of a no-brainer just to try it out. I mean, it's, take that bike for a spin and you're not going to give it up.
Take it for a spin. Of course we want to close deals, but I think really the bigger piece is giving yourself the chance just to even explore what's new opportunity. I mean, I talk to a lot of builders out there that have software fatigue, that are pretty resistant to the idea and the concept of it. Don't have the problem. Just from a business exploration standpoint, if this was interesting in the slightest, just go fill out a contact form. We're not going to sell you to death. We're going to get you into a demo. We're going to go through process scoping. We're going to make sure this is a good fit. We're going to make sure there's actually problems that we can solve. And then to your point, Mark, I mean, it genuinely is logging into QuickBooks and syncing it to Adaptive, and your account is built. So very little friction to get involved, especially if you have that inclination for AI in your business.
Yeah, excellent. Well, appreciate your time and for everyone listening. And we'll see you next time, guys.
Appreciate it, Mark. This is great.
Hey, Mark.
We are happy to announce that we have a one-to-one coaching session that can be found on our Curious Builder podcast platform. So you can book a time with me, and it'll be 1 hour to ask any sort of questions that you want, talk about business, talk about life. Maybe you're dealing with a difficult client and you just want to maybe shop with another builder and say, hey, how do I handle this? Or maybe you're looking to rebrand your company. Whatever it might be, you can head to our website and book a time, and I'd be happy to sit down and give you that hour, and we can talk about whatever's on your mind. The podcast has now been running for the last 2 years, and it's because of people like you that are listening to the podcast, spreading the word, that our audience continues to grow. One of the ways that you as listeners can help support the show is head to our merch page, our shop page on thecuriousbuilderpodcast.com. You'll see that we have 3 different offerings now. We have a shirt that we partnered with Harnish on. We have a hat from BOGO that I use for ultra running. It's also just incredibly sweat resistant. So for if any of you guys are outside in the sun working, the hat looks great, but it's also extremely resilient to sweat. And then of course our Hive notebooks. These notebooks are amazing. I was given one a couple years ago and I've fallen in love with it. The paper's made out of stone. It's waterproof. It's tear-proof. It's amazing. So if you like what you listen to, if you appreciate the show and the content that we're producing, please head to the shop page. Buy a notebook, buy 2, give some to your employees, give some to the guys in the field. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.